Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
Welcome to the T2 Hubcast with me, Spencer Locker.
And me, Dave Pendleton.
Hey, that was a little bit weird, wasn't it, Dave? That was really weird. That was totally out of the comfort zone there.
Wrong names in the wrong frames.
I nearly said me, Martin Johnson.
Rugby player.
Yeah. Okay, so as we said, T2 podcast time again. What are we going to talk about today, then, Dave? What's because I've got an idea, but
well, it seems to be something that's coming more and more and more to the forefront of people's brain, Spencer, as we keep talking about we're living in a changing world. I'm not entirely sure it's changing much at the moment. It's just sort of staying the same.
Right.
Because obviously we went through one large lockdown and that was a bit of a shock to most people's systems. But I guess there wasn't an awful lot of call to be able to change what we're doing with any kind of longevity.
Yeah.
And now we've experienced, another small lockdown, and then we're in lockdown again. So it's a bit like us, I suppose. You know, we resisted technology to carry on virtually, but then, of course, we started to having to embrace technology, and now technology is just part of what we do. And I suppose it's a little bit like this in the sales world.
Right. So when you say it's part of what we do you think that's sort of some people take it for granted?
Well, I think there's probably a little bit like us, I guess, except we were forced into going virtual, because our passion, Spence, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, is definitely face-to-face delivery. It's our passion.
100%.
It's probably where we are at our most effective.
Certainly.
And it's definitely what we enjoy, probably the most. So I guess there was some resistance to carrying out that sort of level of virtual delivery because it's incredibly different. Not something I've done a lot of in all my years of L&D, not something you or Martin has done either. So it's a whole new skill set. And I think this is what's happened probably in the world of sales.
Right.
Is that lots of salespeople have tried to carry on as they were with some minor adjustments as to what they think selling virtually looks like, but with no level of education particularly.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think I know. I think I get what you're saying. So they're acknowledging the importance, but sort of saying, well, how hard could it be?
I guess, yeah.
Without actually, maybe there's certain things certain touch points, certain techniques, certain things that they should really seriously consider to make it effective.
Yeah, you're right, Spence. And listen, I guess we could put this train of thought to most things, couldn't we? That it's a new thing, so therefore requires a new skill set.
Yeah,
or certainly a review of the current skill set or an enhancement of the current skill set. Maybe that's a more accurate way of describing it. An enhancement of the current skill set, because I've been doing quite a lot of reading. I've been going to all the big boys in terms of global consultative sales, and as well as thinking about from my own experience and reflecting on really sort of key skills in the sales world. And whilst I think enhancing skills is probably more accurate rather than learning new skills.
Right. So from what you're sort of saying there is when people have been sort of effective in the sales world, not necessarily in the virtual sales, but there's a certain skill set that makes this effective, which promotes success. And when you sort of moving that into the virtual world, there's a certain amount of these skill sets you can enhance, you can modify to actually find it just as effective in the virtual world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because listen, the fact of the matter is that people still need to buy stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that a high percentage of those people who want to buy stuff need a vehicle to do it. And the salesperson is the vehicle to be able to achieve it. I mean, there are definitely some different considerations and some different facets that salespeople, I think, need to be aware of, I guess, more now. But I think it's something that has been developing over the last 10 and definitely 5 years. And then, don't forget, as much as from our own perspective, our arms are forced into new directions. buyers are also forced into new directions as well. So, this is not a lateral thing, it's a bilateral thing.
Right. Okay.
And what I mean by that, Spencer, is that, the internet has given a greater range for people to be able to research products, look at proof of concepts, read websites, get their own price lists, do comparisons, and all those things that they would have needed a salesperson's expertise for in years gone by. But I think even more now because of lockdown and more people being on furlough and working from home and having less access to a bit of technology and so forth, and not being able to do face-to-face meetings, I think the buyers' arms have been forced into extended research. It's almost progressing themselves along the buying cycle instead of relying on or hoping that a salesperson's skill and knowledge can progress them around the buying cycle.
Right. Okay. So that makes a hell of a lot of sense. We looked into buying a car or recently, and something as simple as that, something that we take for granted. We need a new car. Let's buy a new car. Totally changed. The whole thing has totally changed now. I know we've been forced down that way, but it's really interesting how the salespeople that we encountered were different. I suppose. I mean, don't get me wrong. We don't buy cars frequently.
No.
But yeah, when you start talking about the sales cycle, when you start talking about selling, interfacing with the customer, then totally different thing. So when we start talking about sort of this virtual selling, have you got any sort of top tips, sort of guidelines where that people are going to be able to benefit from?
Well, I suppose it makes sense to break it down into 3 or 4 sections, Spence, really.
Okay.
Because I guess what I'd like salespeople, sales managers and so forth to do is to reflect on some of this maybe and just see where either there's a little bit of a gap, that the salespeople can maybe grow into that's going to help them understand the difference between normal, regular, real world selling and actually selling in a virtual world.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to talk about preparation,
right?
Which we would normally talk about during sales anyway.
Right.
We talk about preparation a lot in the 7-step work cycle, the sales 7-step work cycle. Talk about structure and facilitation of meetings and calls, again, which we talk about, but I'm going to talk about it in a slightly enhanced way that's geared more towards virtual.
Yeah.
Self-presentation. And again, it's not a new topic in sales, but just with a few enhancements towards virtual. And then a bit about cold calling, because as much as some sales organizations would like not to be involved in cold calling, there's always an element of some kind of cold calling, reaching out into the outside world. Okay. And of course, the dynamic of that is very different now because lots of people working from home. So
certainly
some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, it sounds like quite a concise list. So you mentioned preparation. That's sort of the obviously preparation prevents poor performance. I had to think on my feet there. Preparation prevents poor performance. Yeah. Are we in the danger of sort of paying it lip service, thinking that it'll take care of itself, or are we really sort of thinking in a different sort of way or is there somewhere in between?
Well, I think there's some new things to think about in terms of preparation. I mean, whenever I work with groups of salespeople and sales managers, we talk about the importance of preparation. It's a little bit like our job, Spence. Salespeople will have a presentation to do. We have presentations to do.
Yeah.
Without any preparation, there's a huge danger that it's not actually a presentation in any form or shape. It turns into, at best, an entertaining ramble. And most often than not, a non-entertaining ramble.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is where the customer will switch off, and it's where our delegates would switch off. So without a huge layer of preparation, these things are more or less destined to fail, because in years gone by, you got a job in sales if you had the gift of the gab, as they called it. If you were good with people and you could build relationships. Of course, that's still important, but there's a whole bunch of considerations now around proof that you can actually carry out the job that the customer needs you to do. Building value is a huge thing. considerations about where the customer is on the buying cycle, because we just mentioned they're probably further around. So, listen, in terms of things to prepare for, we know about research about the customer. We know about, understanding the size of the opportunity and all those types of things that salespeople should be engaging in. However, once we start thinking about preparation in the virtual world, I think it's almost become a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek verb, I think, Spence. People are using this as a verb now, and you'll know what I'm talking about. John, you're on mute, mate.
Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah,
and that's because people are not used to the technology, or they forget how to use the technology, or they use one platform and get used to it, and then they have to use a different platform with somebody else, so they're not used to that platform. We talk about, the sessions we do, Spence, we tend to have a little bit of banter during the session, and there is a little bit of fun and lightheartedness. And I like that, and you like that. But somewhere along the way, there's always an Amazon man turns up, and always the dog starts going crackers. Or the cat jumps up onto the desk in front of the person in the webcam, or their virtual background fails, and you can see that they're actually sat in a wardrobe, or whatever it might be. All these nuances of working virtually. But I suppose a few points in there, Spence. Just to cover this little bit of prep is that about understanding your tech and the functionality of your tech. So it's not just the tech switching it on, logging on. It's what does it actually do? What does this button do? How can these buttons and this functionality and this tech enhance the experience that I'm trying to put across to the prospect or customer? Of course, we talk about facts and figures all the time. Materials, what is it I actually need to be able to carry this thing out effectively and professionally? Another thing about preparation, Spence, of course, is about outcomes. Lots of salespeople go into any kind of meeting, be it virtually or otherwise, with an outcome that is generally sales centric. I'm going into this meeting today and I want the sale. I say that's flawed. I say generally it's a fundamentally flawed outcome. It's too big. So breaking down your goals and what is it I'm trying to achieve from this call today? It might just be a little bit more understanding about the shape and the size of the opportunity. It might be about what's actually going on in the customer's world. It might be to start planting seeds about the products that we supply. It might just be a rapport builder. There could be a whole bunch of different things that I'm trying to achieve on this call. But I can only understand that if I actually think about it rather than wing it. Dangerous.
Get it. Totally.
Cool. Dangerous.
Excellent. Oh, well, I think that's covered preparation quite thoroughly. Well prepared, Dave.
Thank you very much, Spencer. I do try.
But again, when you were talking about preparation, you sort of skirted over like a structure and how you're going to sort of facilitate this. So that's part of your preparation, but it's also something else that you mentioned by itself. What does that look like?
Listen, I think it's fair to say as well, and you can agree or disagree. I think there is an added level of nervousness or apprehension to doing things virtually. I know with certainly with me, the first half dozen or even a dozen virtual deliveries that we did, I wasn't looking forward to. And I've been delivering to people for a number of years, a long time. It's not something I should be nervous about particularly. And I'm not just talking about the nervousness of making sure we have a great first 5 minutes and then we're into it and getting into the flow. I'm talking about just using the tech. Am I going to be good at this? Am I going to get the level of engagement that I could normally get in a room? Participation, what's that going to be like? Are people going to be switching the cameras off and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So listen, in terms of structure and facilitation, I've got some basic thoughts really. And it's like, a meeting agenda, if you like. Understand what I'm trying to achieve from this. Make sure I've got my prep right, and then actually have a list of things that I want to do. So that's my agenda of things that I want to talk about. Obviously linked to your end goal. And I think a really, really professional thing to do is to send that to the person that you're going to meet with. Either on the phone call or on the Zoom or on the Teams or whatever it might be, face to face. Send it to those guys as well, because a really important part of any kind of sales process, particularly earlier on, is people understanding why they're there. Why is it you want some time from them? And is that time going to be spent or is it going to be invested? Now, of course, when I ask people for time, I'm going to try my hardest to make sure that they feel as though the time was invested.
Yeah.
It meant something.
Yeah.
It was for a purpose rather than just, another one of them sales calls, another salesperson trying to get some time from me.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure people are experiencing a lot at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the communicating the agenda is the what's in it for me, as we talk about quite a lot. The WIFM, the what's in it for me. This is the reason I'm going to be there, and actually it makes sense.
Yes, and when you can sort of justify that, and you can see it, and I suppose that's sort of promoting trust and honesty, and there's something else that's going to enhance rapport.
Yeah,
and lend itself to building relationships, maybe.
Yeah, all those things. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, we talk about these things in normal world sales as well. Of course we do. But, just some extra considerations because we're asking people for a bit of time virtually, So, yeah. Timings as well. Timings is a really important one. I think probably more so when we're trying to do things virtually because 9 times from 10, busy people have got things stacked up back to back. We was just talking about our agendas for the week, and if we're not doing virtual delivery, we're doing some coaching. And if we're not doing some coaching, we're doing a one-to-one, and if we're not doing that, we're doing this podcasting or recording videos. We got to expect that people that were asking for time off are doing exactly the same thing. So in terms of, when we do get the opportunity to either have a phone call or a Zoom or Teams or other platforms are available, of course. That there is a point to it. We're gonna absolutely control those timings, and if we can be efficient, so we can get them off just a shade sooner than we expected, which will make them feel better about the whole thing as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you what, something you did mention, bearing in mind that I'm not a sales guy, very, very limited. I've got really good feedback on eBay, but I'm not a sales guy.
That's amazing, Spence. Mine's terrible.
But you mentioned self-presentation.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm looking forward to you sort of explaining that a little bit to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we talk about this in the world of sales as well. This is not a new thing.
Right.
However, and I've certainly experienced this an awful lot with our virtual delivery, and I'm sure you have too, Spencer. And I guess from time to time I might have even been guilty of this as well. And you can tell me where this applies to you. And again, we're almost using this as in normal terminology now. That we have a bit of a laugh with some of our groups, don't we? And in the first couple of minutes, we get everybody to stand up to see what they're wearing on the bottom half. Because they might look. I can't remember the saying now, but it's business up top and bed downstairs or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah. So they've got the comfy clothes on.
Comfy's on, yeah. And just for the sake of the camera, we look all business, but downstairs we're still off to bed. So yeah. In terms of presenting yourself, if you are going to meet with somebody virtually, either on the phone or on a some sort of meeting platform where you can see the person. I always suggest, I'm definitely going to suggest from here on in, getting ready for business all the way down to your feet, because I don't know about you, Spence. If I'm ready, if I'm externally ready, I feel ready rather than only partially feeling ready. I still feel as though I'm at home if I'm only half dressed. Whereas if I'm fully dressed, I feel ready for the outside world.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that affects my mental state, and I think it probably affects my external behaviors, therefore my performance. Now, of course, some people are going to disagree, but by observation, I think that's certainly something I could speak from firsthand. Business upstairs and bed downstairs. And in terms of presenting yourself, you've got to make sure as well that you kick off on time, you finish on time. So some of the things that we've linked to above. Structure and facilitation.
Sort of discipline, isn't it?
Yeah, there's definitely a disciplined element to it. Yeah, for sure.
You've got to. I mean, you're being prompt. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that do the same as me who logs onto a Teams call or a Zoom call or whatever 5 minutes early, just to check the background, just to check that my hair looks all right. Because if I've been out with the dog and I've had my hat on and I've taken my hat off, my hair might be a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just checking myself out. I don't mean that in a narcissistic way, but checking myself out, making sure I'm appropriate for the situation. But it gets you in that mindset, as you said, you prepare
absolutely
internally. Good stuff.
Yeah, hair, beard, everything manicured. Wearing the right clobber, making sure your intro's great when you do actually get into it. We talk an awful lot about first impressions.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit cliched, but you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So, you want all these things to go really, really well. And, I guess a question would be, is it more important virtually than it is face-to-face? Because, I mean, I regard it as being highly important in both situations.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just enhanced more virtually.
Yeah.
Because the person at the other end of the call is busy. They have less time. They maybe have a little less patience. They may be triggered from not being in the office all the time. They've got the dog and the wife and the kids running around the house, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I think it's probably even more important that we make the right impression in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, certain amount of discipline, it's respect as well, isn't it? And when people feel that you're disciplined and demonstrating that certain amount of respect, then it puts a sort of a form on the conversation.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about virtual selling, and so far we've talked about the importance of it. Some of the similarities and processes that we use in virtual selling are similar to or bear quite a close resemblance to the stuff we do in reality selling, or selling in reality
in the normal world.
In the normal world, and the points that you picked up on, if I could sort of chuck them back at you, were preparation being key, structure and facilitation, which again, they inform each other to a certain degree.
Yeah.
We talked about self-presentation and about how you're going to sort of get in the right mindset. You're going to present yourself correctly in that virtual world. Something you mentioned though, cold calling.
Yeah. The old sales monster.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't particularly relish it, but am I missing a trick here, or am I not giving them the fair? Well, I tell you what. You tell me what's on your mind where cold calling's concerned.
Well, cold calling is such a broad topic, Spencer. It really is. And there's a whole host of organisations out there who rely on cold calling as their main source of income. Very few people actually like it. Very few people embrace it. It's a minefield, because something that worked yesterday might not work today. So therefore, how am I supposed to form correlations and patterns and behaviors and so forth? It's a very hard thing to do, and I really take my hat off to people who earn a good living because they're good at cold calling. I mean, I really do. But, I just wonder if there is a slightly alternative thought here when we're talking about the virtual world, because, I said earlier on about chasing the sale. Chasing the sale is a very difficult thing to do, at first point of contact, particularly if you're working in the consultative sales environment. So I just wonder, rather than actually try and make a contact to make a sale, should it be a bit more about lead generation? Should it be more about bringing people in, understanding what you're all about, telling them what you're all about, telling them why you are calling, i.e. I am a salesperson and I've got some things that I'd like to talk to you about, and I think we align. How about we set up a Zoom or a Teams call so then I can present all the information correctly. We can meet, you can look into the whites of my eyes, and we can do a better job. Things to do in advance, maybe, particularly if we know who we're going to try and sell to, who we're going to connect with, is maybe something we do an awful lot of, Spence, and I think we do it quite well, is the proof of concept stuff. So, we do 2-minute videos, do little snippets of podcasts and send them out. Could a salesperson do some kind of proof of concept, send that to the person first, then make an outbound cold call, and then, propose some kind of virtual meeting, so that people understand exactly why you're asking for the time. So they're bought into you, they're bought into the product, the information, and so on and so forth, rather than just trying to beat yourself up, make 50 calls a day and achieve 15 sales a day or something.
Okay. Yeah. I think when you put it like that, I get it. it's not an angle I'd considered before, but that's, you know what, really opened my eyes to virtual selling, that, Dave. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome,
really
Spencer.
Do appreciate it. I tell you what, we'll knock it on the head there, but I'm going to start. I might see if I can do a follow up on this because there's some bits and pieces on there that I'd like to press you on. But for now, Dave, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Spence. My pleasure.
And we'll see you next time on the T2 Hubcast.
Absolutely.